Hello, everybody out there in Radio Land. It is once again that very special time of week. Oh, what time of week is it? Well, it is that time of week where we come onto your radio dial and we dig underneath the headlines. We talk about what the mainstream media is not talking about. And we generally call out the establishment on its BS. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Now, as always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, no matter how dope or insightful they may happen to be. So, wanted to, actually want to start off the show. So, we've got a lot to talk about on the program today. We spent the last couple weeks combing through all of the just absolutely awful, vindictive, lame duck activity coming out of the state legislature. We've got some updates on that. Excuse me. And we've also got some other local state news to talk about, as well as excuse me. Sorry. We got some pressing international stuff. I want to talk a little bit, maybe give a little bit of an update on the Yellow Vest protests out in France, have a little bit of a discussion about it. Some stuff going on here in the community that we are going to dig into fairly soon. So, I actually wanted to start off with, this is a bit of an update, and also, actually a bit of good news. So, last week on the show, we talked about Sheriff Fuller finally putting out a concrete plan, or at least some written documentation, about how the Kalamazoo Police Department will interact with ICE. Also at the county level, sorry. And, this is a story we've been following for some time, for the past 6 months or so. To nutshell it, essentially, what the situation had been in Kalamazoo is, thanks to the efforts of Movimiento Cosecha, which is a national immigrant rights group, and particularly undocumented folks, and they have a chapter here at Kalamazoo that has really been kicking butt and taking names, and where they've been directing a lot of their energy, again, the last 6 months or so, has been towards Sheriff Fuller and trying to get him to stop the practice of ICE holds. Now, what ICE holds are basically ICE, that is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, can just hit up a local law enforcement agency and ask them to hold anybody who happens to be undocumented so that ICE can more or less come and swoop them up. Now, the thing is, at both the city and county level, we've had success in getting both the Kalamazoo City Commission and the Kalamazoo County Commission to basically sign off or vote on these resolutions of non-cooperation with ICE. Sheriff Fuller, more or less, has been kind of like the last holdout. And, one of the main problems with this is, this is a very concrete problem. It's not even about, refusing to take ICE's money or, refusing to divert resources towards them. When somebody gets arrested and they are under danger of being swept up by ICE, that is a very concrete problem that, again, the city and the county administration did not have direct jurisdiction over. And I want to remind people of a story we shared, this was a couple weeks ago when they were having an ICE town hall, about an innocent woman who was in a domestic violence situation. Their abusive partner ended up, calling the police on them, and then they ended up getting arrested and basically are in the middle of deportation proceedings because they were undocumented. So yes, this affects people's lives. It affects innocent people's lives, and it does so in a very concrete way. So, what happened, Sheriff put out a statement last week, and we reported a little bit on it. I was a little apprehensive. Some of the language is a little murky. I was wondering if this was one of those kind of, oh, yeah, we're going to kind of just do a wave of the hand without really any concrete action. And I was waiting to see basically what Cosecha's response would be to it. So now we have their response, and I'm actually just going to go ahead and read it because, again, there is a little bit of nuance, but as I said at the top of the hour, there is a pause for celebrating some good news. So, as many of you know, Movimiento Cosecha Kalamazoo has been working tirelessly to end ICE holds in our community. We have been pushing for a policy that would end the practice of holding people in jail 48 hours longer than they should, waiting for ICE to pick them up and transport our people to another detention center. We have consulted with various trusted immigration attorneys about the policy, and they report to us that 48-hour holds have ended. However, the policy that has been written raises the questions about how the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department will handle undocumented immigrants under their purview. It seems the written directive is just a rearranging of policies that will that still makes our community unsafe, as Fuller is still willing and open to cooperating with ICE, even when he is not required to do so by law. And that is correct. If you read his statement, he talks in a very congenial way about how he is still going to work with quote-unquote law enforcement agencies. Of course, that in this particular circumstance would mean Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We want to make clear that the end of ICE holds is a change in procedure that came about through the hard work of Movimiento Cosecha Kalamazoo. The success of this campaign is not necessarily the change in procedure. The true success is the undocumented community standing up, organizing, and mobilizing that resulted in the end of ICE holds. The win goes to those mothers who are in the struggle, showing up to organize. The win goes to the students who left school early or might have had to rush on their assignments, but they were there, front and center of the fight. The win goes to the working folks who, after a full day of work, showed up to fully present at the vigils. The win goes to all those who raised their voices to let Fuller know cooperating with ICE is not okay in our community. But the greatest win and the greatest praise of all goes to the undocumented community, to our people who have stared directly in the face of the oppressor and said, "No more. You do not have power over me anymore." We will continue to work to make our community safer from the police and from ICE, and we will continue holding accountable those with promises to us. We are Movimiento Cosecha Kalamazoo, and that is what we do and how we do it. So, again, a big congratulations to all of the undocumented folks in our community. This is a big victory, and in particular, some of the organizers out there who have really been working tirelessly to stand up for their community, and have really just been cracking away at making sure that we have immigration justice in our community. So, also wanted, while we're on the subject of good news, James Fields is going to be sent to the gulag for life. No. So, James Fields, if you do not know, or if the name escapes you, that is the young Nazi POS that ran over anti-fascist activist and protester Heather Heyer in Charlottesville last year. This is just from the New York Post. I'm going to read a little bit from it and then dive into some of the implications from it too, because there are a few things to unpack from this. So, the Nazi sympathizer who drove into a crowd of protesters, killing one last year in Virginia, was sentenced to life in prison plus 419 years Tuesday. Jury recommended the sentence after listening to an emotional statement from Susan Bro, the mother of 32-year-old Heather Heyer, who was killed on August 12th, 2017, when James Fields plowed into her and other people protesting the white nationalist Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Her death was an explosion to the world, her mother said. We are forever scarred by pain. The verdict was reached after about 4 hours of deliberation over 2 days, and Fields stood impassively, his hands folded in front of him as it was read by a court clerk. Excuse me. And, you know, it goes on to kind of talk about the circumstances of the trial here. And I wanted to kind of unpack this a little bit and say, you know, this is another victory in a sense. And even I am going to frame this in somewhat cynical terms, but it is certainly a victory nonetheless. So there are a lot of right-wingers like James Fields, white nationalists, who maybe a little bit overly cocky. And what I mean by that, and they're certainly not wrong about this idea that the police and the state are on their side. And the fact of the matter is they are. They certainly are. But there are certain things that, you know, even in the age of Trump, you still cannot get away with in such a brazen fashion. The extent to which our legal system is able to function properly, and, you know, in this case, you know, you had, well, let's be clear, you had a white person kill another white person. To that extent, justice was able to be dealt in an appropriate fashion. However, yeah, you do have a substantial constituency now of white nationalists in this country, and, you know, this isn't a new thing, but, you know, it certainly have been emboldened under the age of Trump, who have this kind of understanding about the state, that the state has your back. However, when you kill a bunch of innocent people in a very public fashion, and it makes national, international headlines, there's not really much that the racist police state or the white supremacist colonial government can really do to help you out. That would be pushing it a little bit too far and giving up the ghost, as it were. Sorry, that kind of summing up some Klan imagery in anybody's heads, but yeah, because, like, make no mistake, there's probably a lot of white supremacist organizers out there who are talking about it in this terms. It's like, oh, well, you know, we need to rethink our tactics. We can't be this obvious about it because, yeah, those mechanisms are still in place, and even though we are living through a resurgence of global fascism, we at least are not yet at the point where you can get away with killing socialists and anti-fascist protesters in the street without repercussion. And I guess any white supremacists locally or who might monitor this podcast, you would do very well to remember that. State can only help you so much, bro. Anyway, that is some good news, but also, I mean, it's a Pyrrhic victory, of course, because, you know, condolences, of course, thoughts with the family. You know, looking back myself to when Charlottesville and this particular incident first happened, you know, even before James Field murdered Heather in cold blood, it was already a very tenuous and tension-ridden situation. And, you know, we were looking at it, and by we, I mean, you know, people on the left, people who engage in protests and whatnot. We're looking at, like, it was already a very tension-ridden flashpoint, kind of, you know, the left versus the reactionaries. And I can't think of any moment in that first year, because, you know, this is the first year after Trump got elected. A lot of folks were still in shock. But that was the first incident that really, it made things concrete in a very unfortunate and scary way. And, this is, of course, not to minimize the violence that goes on every day towards, our brothers and sisters at the border, our undocumented brothers and sisters, our black brothers and sisters who are literally at the heel of state violence each and every day. But there is just something jarring about a white nationalist murdering and injuring people in public in cold blood. That kind of brazenness was new, and it was I would say it was also kind of a tipping point. You notice after Charlottesville, and this was very odd to me, like anti-fascism, black bloc became part of the national lexicon, whereas just months earlier it was something that was completely alien to the American political landscape, and even to the protest landscape. You have some old heads who were involved in a lot of the globalization protests in the late 90s, but for the most part, this kind of thing had not really been seen. Even when you look at some of the property destruction that happened at Occupy, there wasn't this kind of combative anti-fascist dimension to it. So, to all of us out there, warning to all the Nazis out there, you can still get got if you go around murdering folks. And to the rest of us, we're still living in some pretty scary times, and we cannot always depend on the justice system to, come back and right these wrongs in this way. That is a good question to ask. What if this murder hadn't been quite so public? What if James Field had been a cop? What if Heather Heyer was not a white woman? These are all pertinent questions that we should all be thinking about as folks on the left, because again, while Heather and people like her put themselves in the line of fire, they put themselves on the front lines that day. There are people living in this country right now where the front lines is every day. Front lines is when they walk outside and around the corner, wondering whether or not a police officer is going to riddle them with bullets, or a Native American person who let's not forget they are the group in America with the highest rate of police murder that they deal with. Or if you're a Native American woman wondering if you're ever gonna come back home after you step out the door, again. I'm not trying to be crappy about this. As a matter of fact, if you look back and remember, Heather Heyer's family, especially right after the murder, was echoing some of these same points that I'm bringing up now. When you have a commitment to social justice, especially as somebody who is white and has that privilege, it is your duty to recognize that and put yourself on the line where our black and brown and LGBTQ brothers and sisters can't necessarily go. So with that, I think I'm gonna close out that particular topic, but I want y'all to stay tuned. We've got a lot more to talk about on the program today. I did want to mention a little bit. So there was a really good expansion on the yellow vest protest. There's an article at Consortium News. I'd highly recommend everybody check it out. We talked a little bit. We had a really great interview on the show last week, and again, big thanks to Zoe for joining us, who is currently teaching in France. So we actually got an on-the-ground perspective. I wanted to kind of open it up too and talk a little bit more about the roots of this. The deal with the public backlash against Macron is not, obviously we talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday, but kind of around the edges, or not yesterday, but last week. And it is that it's not strictly about the fuel tax. It's that Macron is been instituting austerity in France. He has been going after social programs. He has been looking to, privatize certain facets of the welfare state, up to and including, healthcare. He is very much tied into the austerity politics of the European Union. And when I talk about austerity politics, what I mean by that is, we've got the European Central Bank, and their priority is to extract money from nations in order to basically keep the wealth of the European Union and the central bank over there going. So Macron, not just Macron, but you've also seen this in Greece. You've seen this in other countries, including Hungary and Poland, which have both ceded to right-wing demagogues as a result. That when the reaction of your government to pressure from the EU is to tighten your belts and extract from the working class people of your nation, while at the same time, and this is absolutely correct, giving the wealthiest in your nation tax breaks, then you're going to run into some problems. You're going to run into some resistance. If it's in the case of Hungary or Poland, you're going to end up with a super right-wing demagogue, or, here in the United States or in Brazil, or what almost happened in France. Let's not forget, Marine Le Pen mounted a shockingly almost successful campaign, basically piggybacking on these kind of issues. Macron got in saying, I'm the anti-Le Pen, but also saying, again, we are witnessing kind of the collapse of the neoliberal arguments almost in real time, because, as I'm speaking today, there's a vote of no confidence against Theresa May. Macron is being chided to step down. Angela Merkel is also kind of in hot water. And one of the really important things that I think is not necessarily being talked about, especially when we're discussing the political dimension of these protests, is that right now, between leftists, socialists, progressives versus the right-wing reactionaries, and to my mind, just from what I've seen, it's still more or less anybody's game. But the left is on the ropes. And here's what I mean by that. You're already starting to see some of these other yellow vest protests take on a more right-wing character. Talking about the globalists, talking about stopping migration. And the big problem with that, of course, is if you're a leftist, you're going to talk about the core root of these problems. You're going to say, of course there is migrants. They're coming, if it's Europe, you're talking about places like Syria, places like Yemen, which is literally the direct result of, American and Western imperialism. If you're a leftist, you can point to that and be like, if we want to stop migration, make those countries better through some kind of Marshall Plan. But also, obviously, you get to a point, if you're a true leftist, I think you should advocate for open borders. But if you have some kind of economic equity and your relationship to those countries in the global south is not one of exploitation, then cross-country migration is not going to be a problem. Because if we have kind of more equitable economic stability, then you're not going to have this right-wing talking point about the immigrants coming up to take our jobs is not going to hold water if people are employed and more importantly have a good quality of life. It's only at times when you have figures like Macron who are trying to gut the social safety net, basically to feed the central bank. then that you have this kind of opportunism for the right wing to come in and say, oh, your problem is not the oligarchs, or it is an oligarch, but it's this suspiciously Jewish one named George Soros. It's these people coming from Syria, from Yemen, and again, while people in Europe tend to be at least a little bit more educated than Americans, there's still a vested interest in making sure that people do not investigate the root causes of these problems. I mean, you see it here in the United States with the migrant caravan. Most of those migrants are coming from Honduras, and oh, how people do not study their history and have such short memories. Because as we know, Honduras, the reason it's in the state it is now was because of a coup in 2009 that our government supported. So, I guess I'll just wrap that thought up. I'm about to go let my co-host in. But, we are living in some pretty spooky times, and it remains to be seen who is going to end up controlling the narrative. The socialist progressive left or the right-wing reactionaries. And for my part, pull for those on the left in whatever way that you can. So we'll be right back. I'm going to go let my co-host in. Y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Hello, we are back. We're actually about to go to a break. I did want to mention real quick, big thanks to Sid Redlin. This bed music that you were listening to was recorded on January 6th, 2018 over at Deep Space Nine. Again, big thanks to Sid Redlin for giving us some music to play underneath all our political reporting. And just a shout out, if you are a local musician, you got any non-copyrighted beats or jazz or noise music or anything of the sort, hit us up. We'd love to use it on our program. Anyway, we'll be right back. Y'all listen to Hoodrat Strategist radio program, your only source for political revolution.
.1 WIDR.
The hottest thing since the St. Vitus dance in the Middle Ages, and with much the same symptoms. From the bourgeois businessman to the bohemian ballerina, the craze hits regardless of class or social status.
Radio Evolution.
The swaying rhythmic motion is not only good exercise, it's relaxing, so you tend to stay with it. Relaxing, it's downright hypnotic.
May not be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Hey y'all, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So, I'm joined now by co-host Nora.
Hello.
Yep, and while we're still in Europe, I like to think about it. It's like, we're actually in Europe talking about this stuff. But let's talk a little bit more about European stuff, and then we'll come back. We'll bring it on back to Michigan and, of course, Kalamazoo related stories. But you brought up something that I actually kind of forgot to bring up on the show, but is also critically important.
Yes.
The COP20 going on over in Poland. So why don't you go ahead and start talking? I'm going to look up some important video from it.
Yeah, so COP24 is a yearly UN-sponsored set of talks dealing with the threat of climate change. And this year it's taking place in Poland, as we've just mentioned earlier. Has been recently elected in like a horrible fascist government. And even before then, they've been really increasing their coal production, and they're going to continue to do so. And I guess there's part of me that wonders if it's not a coincidence that they chose that to be here when they have like a newly elected authoritarian government, so that they can crack down harder on these protests. Like, if you think like American protest permit quote unquote laws are ridiculous, then like they're really pushing that here in Poland. Like, if you try to call out any of the polluting corporations that are there, then you can get kicked out of the main venue and all that stuff.
Yeah, I thought like that was incredible when I heard that. It's like you literally cannot say the name of fossil fuel corporations at the summit in a critical fashion, or they will strip you of your credentials.
That's basically what it is. And Democracy Now! Has a bunch of videos on it. They've been reporting live from Katowice, Poland, which is in the somewhere in the southwest of the nation, kind of west central, I should say. But if you have the video up with some of the things that people have said, it's really, really phenomenal what people are facing all over the world in terms of this climate catastrophe.
All right, so I wanted to play this clip because probably the most, the most arresting speaker I've heard. Like, and they did a whole episode with her yesterday. Democracy Now! Did, but Greta Thunberg, she's a 15-year-old from Sweden, and I'm just gonna play this clip because she is about to spit some hot fire to some of the most powerful people on the planet, mind you. So here's this clip of Greta Thunberg addressing several world leaders about the climate crisis.
For 25 years, countless of people have stood in front of the United Nations climate conferences, asking our nation's leaders to stop the emissions. But clearly, this has not worked, since the emissions just continue to rise. So I will not ask them anything. Instead, I will ask the people around the world to realize that our political leaders have failed us. Because we are facing an existential threat, and there is no time to continue down this road of madness. Rich countries like Sweden need to start reducing emissions by at least 15% every year to stay below a 2-degree warming target. You would think the media and every one of our leaders would be talking about nothing else, but they never even mention it. Nor does hardly anyone ever mention that we are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction, with up to 200 species going extinct every single day. Furthermore, does no one ever speak about the aspect of equity, clearly stated in the Paris Agreement, which is absolutely necessary to make it work on a global scale. That means that rich countries, like mine, need to get down to zero emissions within 6 to 12 years with today's emission speed. Because how can we expect countries like India, Colombia or Nigeria to care about the climate crisis if we, who already have everything, don't care even a second about our actual commitments to the Paris Agreement? So when school started in August this year, I sat myself down on the ground outside the Swedish Parliament. I school striked for the climate. Some people say that I should be in school instead. Some people say that I should study to become a climate scientist so that I can solve the climate crisis. But the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have all the facts and solutions. And why should I be studying for a future that soon may be no more?
So I just want to repeat that because that hit me right in the gut. It is, we already have all the facts. We already have the solutions. And why should I study for a world that may be no more? Oh, and, what's great to me about this, too, is, this platform that, Greta's allowed to have and say that, like, I feel like, she's really speaking for, I think, just about any millennial or Gen Z person I've met who even does a cursory study of the actual reality of climate change. You have that kind of existentially depressed moment where you're like, wow, we're probably going to go extinct. And you know what she really underscores there is just like, she's kind of in this room of older people. And, she's basically saying in her own way, what the hell is wrong with all y'all? Because we already know we've known what's been going on for years, and we have all the solutions to it, but there's a lot. Well, it's even a sanitized term. It's like, a lack of political will. It's like, no, let's be real straight up about it. Enough of the people in power are making enough money off of the status quo that they literally do not care about the future.
And that's exactly the case, and that's what continues to happen. That's why, no matter how much we talk about like these richer and more powerful countries pushing out more of these emissions, while the smaller and poorer countries are actually following the Paris Accords, like that's the long and short of what's going on, and it's disproportionately due to the really wealthy because they own private jets and can buy and throw away whatever.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too to me at a time. It's like, we were just talking about the yellow vests just before you got here, Nora, and one of the interesting dimensions of it is like, and she doesn't talk about this specifically, and even again, I would really recommend everybody like check out that interview, Greta Thunberg, Democracy Now! It's worth an hour of your time. It's good stuff. But one of the things she brings up is like, well, like I don't eat meat, and I have an electric car and all that, but so many of these changes they're going to require organized power to really get some of these solutions through. And the French protests, a lot of I've noticed a lot of like kind of American lefties, maybe somewhere on the liberal side, but they're like, oh, why would you protest a gas tax? That helps with climate change. It's like, no, you're passing along the expense of creating, or lessening fossil fuel dependency onto the shoulders of working class people. And even then, if you look at where that money in France is actually going, it is not going towards building green infrastructure or alternative energy solutions. It's going right back into the Central European Bank. So, we have to come up with solutions that require us wresting power from these states and these corporations that have a stranglehold on our system, because average everyday people just deciding to eat nuts and berries and not drive their car every day, it's not going to mean much when the most powerful corporations in the world are still extracting fossil fuel out of the Arctic. You know what I mean, Nora?
Yeah, there's like literally you can 70% of all emissions have come from like 100 different corporations. Like you could figure out the specific names of all the people that are really behind this kind of tragedy, and there's nothing that we can, and there's nothing that's being done about it, because like the people, like the other people in power are the people with the money, and the people with the political power are all in bed with each other, and it's. Well, like I've said before, like right after midterms, it's probably too late to even do anything to stop it. Even if we are able to keep it at only a 2 degrees Celsius increase, then it's still like pretty horrible what could happen. Like you'd have heat waves in South Asia that would never end. You'd still have like massive migration. You'd still have rising sea levels that would put New York and other places, other coastal cities underwater. It's not a lot to look forward to.
It's, I always tell people, like, the best case scenario is a post-apocalyptic situation, because that means that we're all dead. But it's still, you are still looking at, like, even some of the best. Okay, the best case scenario, which let's be clear, probably isn't going to happen. You could see, like, the coastal cities would have to relocate and restructure, but even under like some of the most optimistic scenarios, we're going to be looking at a complete reorganization of civilization, and like that's the best case. We're talking about parts of America that are going to be completely uninhabitable. Thousands and thousands of climate refugees, needing somewhere to stay that is actually habitable, where they can grow their crops and they aren't dying from life-destroying heat waves every year.
We might all have to move to Antarctica.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've actually talked about on the show before, there's this article I go back to a lot. I think we talked about this about a year ago, where like they project like on current trajectories, and if we hit at least some of the targets from the Paris Agreement, Michigan is going to have a climate comparable to that of modern day Georgia, which in the grand scheme of things would make it kind of a prized place to live, particularly when you're going to have places in this, California. A lot of it's going to become desert again. A lot of the Southwest is going to be too hot to live. Places like New York are going to be underwater. So places like us in the Midwest are going to be, I'm just about to say hot spot, but yeah, that's a pun there. But by the end,
flyover country now.
Yeah. But by the end of the century, you'll be able to grow corn in the Upper Peninsula. So
wait, there's someone there in the Midwest that you can't grow corn? What is this?
Yeah, believe it or not, the UP is right now, it's too cold to grow corn, but that will likely change. Have you seen that joke going around about, so a lot of people around this time of year talk about the problematic nature of Baby It's Cold Outside, and it's that song where they talk like, I should really go, and the guy sing, no, you should stay, what's in my drink? And I guess at the time it had a different meaning because of patriarchy and all that stuff.
Apparently it was considered polite to insist that someone stay at their house when it was cold, back when you could like literally freeze to death and they didn't have cars or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, but in a modern context, it sounds very date rapey.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's this status about it. It's like, imagine explaining Baby It's Cold Outside to somebody in 20 years. It's like they just won't understand the context. You'll have to explain to them, yes, it used to get cold outside. Yes. Oh dear.
It's the fact that we're not even we're barely even getting snow here in Michigan should be a concern.
I was actually shocked today just because I was expecting there to be snow on the ground, and it's like 40 or something on the way here. It started raining.
It's still a light drizzle right now.
Yeah. Like, what? And granted, let's not conflate climate with weather. That's what the president jack-o'-lantern does. But it is important to know, just on a trend, our winters have been, particularly in Michigan, you have a couple of really warm winters, less and less snow every year. Every couple of years we'll just get a monster winter, and that's kind of what the climate projections pan out, is that mild, warmer winters punctuated by super cold, super precipitous ones. And
and while we're bringing that back to Michigan, that's why it's so this state is so important that we're able to preserve its what little social safety nets it has, what few access to democracy that it has, and protect what we can of our environments. Meanwhile, of course, the state government, led by the GOP's lame duck sessions, doing everything it can to do the opposite of that.
Oh man, do we want to go into that topic?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
In,
so, tricky Rick Snyder did officially sign that bill that would take, what is it, $500,000, like $5 million something dollars of state money to like build that, that tunnel for the Line 5 pipeline in the Straits of Mackinac.
Yeah.
Which would effectively guarantee that it stay there for about 10 years. Like, the only reason I see us getting out of that is if the legislature isn't able to limit Dana's power, and she can like stop that before like construction really gets going on that. But even then, like, that's...
I think what the interesting thing we're going to see with Dana is you're already starting to see, because, they're trying something extremely similar in Wisconsin. I think
it already passed in Wisconsin, actually.
The actual minutia of their bill is slightly different, but it has the same intention of basically forcing the attorney general to go through the legislature in order to pursue lawsuits. So, it'd be interesting for me to see that in Wisconsin, they're already mounting a legal challenge to this. My best guess is I think like
it just got overturned. Something similar just got overturned in North Carolina, actually.
Yeah.
So,
so it'll be very interesting. I could see potentially maybe like Dana teaming up with the AG from Wisconsin to try to take down this attempt by the GOP to defang them. Unfortunately, like, the big problem is like, best case scenario, we work through some of this bureaucracy and weeds, and we do eventually get Line 5 shut down. It was clever of the GOP and the fossil fuel interests to whom they are the puppets of, to they're basically throwing a monkey wrench in right before it goes. So it's like we're just trying to keep that pipeline on life support, and stall until it breaks,
which it will.
Yeah,
before those 10 years are over.
And it's interesting to me, as you said, like about 5 years. That would be after the next election. So I mean, whatever strategy they'd have, they're trying to keep it alive long enough to see. It's like if we can get like a Republican governor in the next election, and to like preserve this pipeline. But yeah, they're trying to like give it enough time so that the current administration that's in there now will not really be able to do much about it. And there's a couple other notable lame duck bills that I really wanted to talk about. So one of the big success stories of the November election, and we've talked about a lot, is some really great kind of pro-democracy reforms and citizens ballot initiatives ended up getting through the state legislature. But, not to be taken down by some good old people's organizing and democracy, they have to, of course, push back on that. And I'm trying to find the article here right now, but...
So basically, they're going to try to pass a law that would make it almost impossible to get a ballot initiative actually on the ballot.
Yep.
And this is also one of the most egregious things that they're trying to push through right now.
So, what it would do, and I as somebody who's actually circulated petitions, it's really like made my eyes widen, because talking about like the new law would invalidate signatures gathered by a petition circulator who was found to provide any fraudulent information.
Wow.
Okay, so if you haven't collected signatures before, this is actually something kind of common that happens. People will write down the wrong address, or they won't fill out the whole thing. Say you're a petition circulator, and you're going around trying to get these signatures. Somebody, spells something wrong, or they write down the wrong address, or they leave one of the fields blank. Typically what happens is when you turn it into the state government, that signature will no longer count. And, that's reasonable. Understand that. What this is trying to say is, like, if you get one signature that has incorrect information on this, and that they'll try to, like, this will be the way they interpret it, then that circulator, the person who's been circulating that petition, all of their signatures are bunked now. And this could be somebody like, you remember a good example when we were gathering signatures for Eponine, we had circulators who gathered like 100, 200 signatures, something like that. And when your threshold is for these ballot initiatives, it was like just a few thousand. That will just kneecap you in your attempt to get these signatures. And, another thing that would just be absolutely debilitate the ability to pass these ballot initiatives would be it would also mandate that no more than 10% of the signatures gathered could come from any of the state's 14 congressional districts. That means if you're in a city, you can only collect so many signatures from that city. The idea is like you have to go somewhere that is literally harder to collect signatures, like the rural areas, etc. It's not unfeasible, but particularly it's a lot of people who are able to gather these signatures are in urban areas because they have the time and they have the proximity to lots of people in order to do it. So it's and kind of spitting off some of the other ones from the list here. We have the you mentioned some slightly good news about it. This idea of the no stricter than federal bill and
for environmental regulations.
Yes, and it would make it so the incoming and its administration would be unable to pass any environmental protections stricter than the Trump administration, which is just absolute madness.
Now, specifically, they use we can't do anything stricter than the federal government, but right now, what the Trump administration has been more successful at than anything is gutting environmental regulations. Now, fortunately, this is a similar bill already went to Snyder's desk a while back, and he vetoed it. I don't know if that'll happen again. Getting the Line 5 bill to his desk was part of some larger deal that he wanted to do with the legislative branch, and that he was willing to sign some of the stuff that they wanted, but he didn't necessarily want, so long as he got his Line 5 thing in. But for example, he hasn't technically signed off on gutting the minimum wage and paid sick leave, but there's still a very good chance that he'd do that because the legislature gave him what he wanted for the most part. And so we'll see what happens. There's some document that does give live updates on a lot of these horrible bills. It's because they just kind of keep on coming at us, and it's really, frankly, hard to keep track.
It really is. I think those are the ones. I don't think I'm missing anything since the last week when we covered this. I did want to bring up, you brought to attention this really great article that talks about one of the bills we talked about, 1176, was this bill that would really obscure dark money, and that actually would have a very substantial local impact here in Kalamazoo. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to read a little bit from the article, and then we can talk about it a bit. City Attorney Clyde Robinson said the bill, which did pass 25-12, unfortunately, it would make the disclosure of Foundation for Excellence donors a misdemeanor crime. Individuals could even seek monetary damages from the city for revealing their identity under the bill, which let's see, this is published on the 10th. I'm not sure if it's passed in the House yet. But it's gone through the Michigan Senate, and here's the thing, and I remember you and me were both on the front lines of fighting for transparency with this thing, and kind of the thing was it's you can always FOIA this stuff, we'll make it transparent, you'll see who's giving this money, because the big problem, especially after they knocked out the ban on restricted gifts, was we want to know who is investing this money in our city so that we can see if they have any ulterior motives, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, and this is straight from Clyde Robinson, the exemptions in FOIA generally, with a few exceptions, and this would be one, are discretionary. The bill makes it mandatory not to disclose and removes the discretion. If you release it, you face liability. So we are now in a situation where if the city actually is public with the identity of a Foundation for Excellence donor, which is something that us and other grassroots organizers were demanding upon its passage, then the city would be legally liable and they could get sued. Oh, God.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to say about that. Like, this is probably, if anything, it like reads some sort of bipartisan bait and switch. The fact that, oh, we're going to do this thing that's going to help people. We're going to make it transparent. But, oh, no, here comes this new bill that would make it illegal to actually make it transparent. Oops, sorry about that. Like, spare me the political theater.
And,
this is
you know,
a scam.
like, even if you give the city administration complete benefit of the doubt, and you know, Bobby Hopewell has gone on record saying that it flies in the face of everything we're trying to do in regards to transparency. I do believe there were a lot of activists, including ourselves at the time. It's like, you know, you need to build this thing airtight so that if something like this comes along from the state, you know, there will still be mechanisms by which the people will have control over this foundation. And, you know, they thought, well, okay, we can let the rich people decide how they want to use their money with this as long as we're transparent about this. It's like, no. Now we're in a situation where you can't be transparent. And it's like, we warned you. And now, you know, like, it's really, it's dark. It's unfortunate. I know, fact of the matter is, it is not reaching its fundraising goals at the pace that it had originally set out. And I think, like, this new, like, this new shielding of transparency, I feel like it's even it'll be a beacon for even more predatory billionaires to maybe come along and be like, okay, well, I know you guys are struggling to meet these benchmarks. Here's what you're going to have to do for me. And since it's transparent, nobody's ever going to know, and I'll be able to extract even more demands and concessions from you than I normally would, because I won't have to face any kind of public scrutiny or pressure. Like,
so a sort of example for this is the Amazon HQ2 deal with New York City and with North Virginia, that one town. We still don't know what actually was in that deal, what each of those cities had to end up giving up to Jeff Bezos in order to get that deal. We could have that in Kalamazoo from a few companies.
Yeah.
Oh,
boy. Well, we'll keep you posted about this. And, you know, I actually, we're hoping to have Sean McCann on in the next couple of weeks, probably after winter break. And probably one of the big questions I want to talk to him about is like, what can we do to reverse some of this horrible stuff?
I mean, I think that the biggest losses that could happen after this lame duck session within reason would be the taking away of the AG's of significance, AG's power, and the loss of being able to, let's face it, do ballot initiatives at all.
Yeah.
Now, what we could hypothetically do, you know, Dana could provide, like, you know, a legal challenge to each one of these horrible bills that make it through. But, like, it's going to take a whole lot longer if she's, like, you know, kneecapped. One thing that could make it quicker is if we get a ballot initiative, for example, to, like, repeal all these horrible lame duck bills full stop and, like, end the legislative session right after the election.
Yeah, you know, that would be a great idea. And, you know, like, you know, the big problem with, the reason to tackling these ballot initiatives is, like, and you saw this all over the country, not just in Michigan, is that even if you have a really strong conservative base, even if you have a really strong base that eats a lot of that kind of reactionary propaganda, most Americans that you talk to will be down for pro-democracy reforms. You know, that's why an anti-gerrymandering bill did so well. That's why voter access did so well, even among people who maybe you always vote for a party that is against that kind of stuff. So it's very much in the interest of the GOP to stopgap ballot initiatives, because ballot initiatives, from what I've seen, are like one of the main ways that, you know, people kind of build a transpartisan consensus around democracy reforms. I mean, look at Florida. You know, Florida, most of the high-profile Democrats in Florida lost, but in the very same election, they re-enfranchised thousands of new voters. Or, you know, look at Maine, which, again, elects a lot of consistently conservative representatives, but was the first state to pass ranked choice voting. So, Again, like there's a very particular reason they're going after and trying to gut our ability to do ballot initiatives. And I mean, it's just so transparently snaky. It really is.
The ballot initiatives also allow people to do things that like the Democratic Party would like either refuse to do, dance around, or only do if they're put under intense political pressure.
Exactly. I'm trying to think of a good example off the top of my head, but like there's been a lot of ballot initiatives that like look to strengthen existing enterprises, or particularly you notice this a lot in municipalities. There's a really good example from Ohio, and I'm having a brain fart on the name, but the city literally voted to more or less seize the means of production at this particular factory that was going to outsource, and the citizens of the town basically took it over and turned it into an worker co-op. So yeah, a lot of times, like these ballot initiatives can be a way for people to actually circumvent the annals of corruption that we've allowed to be anally impacted up in our democracy. Sorry, that was a bit of a gross image. I'm sorry, everybody. Okay, well, I don't know. With that, Nora, do you want to take a break and then maybe talk a little bit about? There's a story we want to talk about with a local restaurant.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break, and you are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
What's up, everybody? It's RJD2, and you're listening to 89.1 WIDR FM, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
This is an open slot in the wider clock and could be filled with an underwriting announcement for your local Kalamazoo business. For more information, please visit widerfm.org and head to the contact page.
Wider FM is supported in part by Bell's Eccentric Cafe and their...
Hi, my name is Shelby Lentz, and I'm here to tell you about Champions for HD. Champions for HD is a nonprofit organization that I created that not only helps aid local research, but families struggling with Huntington's disease as well. On December 15th, Champions for HD is having a Christmas for a Cause benefit at South Haven Brew Pub. We'll be having live music and lots of family fun, prizes, pictures of Santa. I'm partnering with not only South Haven Brew Pub, but Stark's Law and Murphy Reed Law. All the proceeds that are made that night will be going back to Champions for HD to help local research and families for the holidays. If you'd like to know more, you can visit us at championsforhd.org.
Hey y'all, we are back. Before we start, big thanks again. This is some of Sid Redland's music you're hearing in the background. This is Sunday Morning Moog, Side of Caffeine, Frop, and Bloody Mary. So let's go ahead and talk about this became a bit of local controversy here in town, and actually, I thought this would be a good opportunity to open up a discussion, because there's a couple of important points that I think that came out of this that I didn't really see other people talk about. So it got somebody was revealed at Hopcat last week, putting out some kind of racist and anti-worker material on their personal Facebook account, and they were a kitchen manager down at the Hopcat downtown. And I'll just read like this one. Okay, so and I'll just say his name because it's already been out there. This guy named Matthew Palin. Or Palin, but he says, "Boo-hoo, minimum wage is not meant to be a living wage. It's meant for kids and people just learning how to work. Maybe people should worry less about how to get marijuana legalized and think about how to become better workers and get promoted." Oh man. Here's a good protest. Let's just send this guy, mail this guy boots because he wants to. And then another thing I got. This was he posted a video. This got found from MRC TV. As it's one of these just like obvious reactionary outlets. Reality check. Hate Nazis but love Black Lives Matter. Yeah, you're a hypocrite. Bro. Oh, man. And I'm going to actually go into a little bit of what MRC is in a second. But so here's what happened. Hopcat did respond. This is, I believe it was our friend Angel Johnston who originally posted about this. There's a couple other people I think who found it first. But somebody emailed Hopcat. And their response, thanks for writing to us about the video and comments posted by one of our managers. We believe that by choosing to represent himself online as a Hopcat manager, he should be held responsible for what he says online and how it reflects on our company. We foster a work environment that is built on inclusion and diversity, and the video he shared is not reflective of the culture. We have formally addressed this employee for violating our social media policy and will be requiring him to attend cultural sensitivity and social media training. Mark Gray, CEO. For a little bit of context, I should also mention Mark Gray. He's the owner of Hopcat, and he himself is a self-described progressive. He was very much involved in both the Bernie Sanders and Abdul El Sayed campaigns, donated a lot of money to their causes and such. So ostensibly progressive. However, yeah, okay, so here's where I'm at with this, Nora. Sensitivity training. Do you think that's enough?
No, because some people have to work for that guy. Like, he's a manager. This is in a state, this is in a right-to-work state that it's still technically legal to fire LGBT people, and even if you're fired for other discriminatory reasons, you can still get away with it. Like, this is 100% not okay. And there's been like some more recent like regional news has been getting bigger headlines. Like I heard about this on Grand Rapids 97.9 that apparently Hopcat's changing the name of their crack fries is like an apology to people who have been hurt by the crack epidemic.
Yeah, I thought
if you're willing to change the name of one of your most famous meal, would it hurt that much to fire this guy who's been posting openly racist and anti-worker stuff on his profile?
Yeah, I mean, this is Kalamazoo. You can find another kitchen manager.
Exactly. There's no shortage of that here. We got plenty of breweries, and in fact, some white suburbanites will say that what makes the city prosper, of course. But it's just really disheartening to see that. And I know one of the people that did email them was talking about the sensitivity training as if it was enough. No, you gotta fire these people. That I've seen companies fire people for doing less things, and I mean, I'm not gonna buy anything from Hopcat for not until this guy gets fired. And I'd recommend everybody listening to go up to Hopcat and make sure they know about that, and to give them lousy reviews on TripAdvisor, Yelp, you name it, until this gets resolved, because this is super not okay.
Yeah, and I do want to make clear to everybody out there, look, you know what, we haven't heard from this individual, and I'm always, I think people can potentially reform, but both of the particularly the comment was fairly recent, that anti-worker comment. And let's talk a little bit. So the whole MRC TV thing, and let's say hypothetically this guy is listening to this podcast or hears about it. MRC, that is the Media Research Center, which is pretty notable for being that stuck a red flag with me, because MRC, they've been around since late 80s. They came right out of the same pool of Heritage Foundation and kind of Powell Memo style conservative strategies to basically disseminate the corporate and anti-worker propaganda. I mean, look at here's a list of companies that support them. Several foundations: Bradley, Scaliff, Olin, Castle Rock, Carthage, and the JM foundations, which are notable for again, like funding a lot of these pro-corporate right-wing outlets, and also receives a lot of funding from ExxonMobil because it's skeptical about climate change. Excuse me. So, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the perniciousness too of like this whole the whole false equivalency of Black Lives Matter to Nazis, and I was gonna sit down and watch the video. I didn't get enough time, but I've seen enough of these kinds of videos that I know what they're trying to do, which is, and this is a very old tactic. It's painting or repainting history to make black activists look like violent reactionaries instead of social revolutionaries. The Black Panthers so much get conflated to be. I even see this from some liberal people, is that like, oh well, they were separatists and they all hated white people, and it's like, no, you look at what they actually said. They talked about a broad, cross-race, cross-cultural working class movement. There was the only cure. There's that famous line from Fred Hampton. It's like the cure to capitalism is not black capitalism, it's socialism. And they in the 60s they worked very hard to build bridges and alliances with groups of all creeds and colors. Same with Black Lives Matter today. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nora. I think you had what you want to say.
You really don't need to see YouTube videos like that for yourself, because they're already being pushed on us by these same like corporate foundation, quote unquote, think tanks. Like, it's ridiculous how many YouTube videos you can watch and get ads for stuff like CRTV, or get full PragerU videos, or get like, I saw some like other third party do like anti-DSA propaganda because they were being mean to politicians in restaurants.
Oh no. Again, reminder, over in France, they literally erect guillotines outside of politicians' offices. So, yeah.
But like, if you look into like CRTV or PragerU, like these sort of like right-wing, like basically propaganda YouTube channels, like, they're already being pushed on us like through their advertisement, and I think part of that might be like a scam from Google on purpose to get you to buy their premium stuff, so you don't have to look at their damn ads anymore. Mm-hmm. But like on top of that, like this also is happening during like a congressional like hearing from like executives of Google, while you have all these right-wing politicians like playing the victim, like, oh, why don't you give us nicer results? Like, they're already doing things for you through YouTube by getting you all these ads. And at one point, Google even hosted CPAC.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Recently.
Mm-hmm. Or like, you look at, Facebook in particular was outed as working. They worked with a lot of the same kind of right-wing propagandists. They literally hired a firm to investigate George Soros and stuff, and not that we particularly like oligarchs on our show, but it's like the difference between, say, like George Soros and the Koch brothers. It's like you and I, we could talk about like, here's specifically all of the crappy anti-worker stuff that Koch brothers have done, whereas the people who talk about George Soros all the time, and they start talking about, oh, the Illuminati, and he's a globalist, and he's like, it's like a lot of like these like connect the dots, like, but I digress.
Make no mistake, like, Mr. Soros has like, funded and lobbied for a lot of really not good things, but like, he really isn't, he's not quite the boogeyman that the right makes him out to be. Yeah. He's not a good guy by any stretch. He's a bajillionaire, and you can't trust those folks.
Yeah. He's just another oligarch, which again means, he controls a lot of the proletariat and the chessboard, as it were, but he's not like some kind of like, master.
He's trying to sneak in all the.
So here's an important point, though, that like, so this guy that we've been talking about, this Matthew Palin dude. So yeah, I agree. I think he should be fired. And what I have heard though, this is going to be kind of there's some nuance to this discussion, because I have heard people, it's like, well, he's a Nazi, fire him, he's a Nazi. And granted, like, I wasn't able to like go onto his like Facebook profile and check him out. Like, maybe he did have some Nazi stuff on there. I'm not sure. I know last time, about a year ago, you remember it was that bar. There's that bar, right?
Yeah.
Where the guy was like literally putting up like Nazi salutes and had like the anti-Semitic iconography and Nazi iconography on his page, and we shut his business down. The people of Kalamazoo collectively did. Kind of same with there's a piercing shop in Ann Arbor, if you've been following this, called Pangea Piercing, and they've been doing something similar. This guy was overtly giving out white supremacist talking points, and I guess my question here is like, so should there be a marked difference between, from what we've seen, the evidence that's coming, it's like this guy, he's regurgitating reactionary talking points, and basically been eating a lot of bootlicking propaganda. But is it okay? I mean, is it improper to equivocate him to being an outright fascist? Because I feel like this is an important point for us on the left to discuss. Because I mean, if you are going to lump like everybody who regurgitates reactionary propaganda in with fascists, well, you're going to be punching people all day.
Well, it's not even just that.
Yeah.
Like, what I think is more important here is the fact that this guy's a manager and that people have to work under him, like people of color, Jewish people, LGBT people, and like this guy's going to have these views. Like, okay, specifically what we know, he thinks that like he trashes on low-income workers, and he equivocates black activists with murderous white supremacists.
Yeah.
Now, is that, will that fall under your definition of fascism? Like, will that fall under my definition of fascism? I don't know. But what it falls under my definition of is somebody who shouldn't be a manager at a restaurant and shouldn't work there.
Oh yeah, I hard agree, and particularly like we mentioned before, this is the guy who runs this corporation touts his progressive credentials. And you've got somebody like with power over other people who disrespects workers and has these kind of racist ideas. Like imagine being a person of color working at Hopcat, having to deal with somebody who thinks this way, and even if they're not outright like insulting you day to day, you always internalize that kind of ideology. And frankly, like, my thing is like, what, fire him, and I don't want him, he should not be a manager anywhere else in town until he like unpacks his reactionary way of thinking when it comes to race. And frankly, he should spend some time being a worker,
Yeah.
Let him work minimum wage for a while, so he learns to be a little bit more humble,
Do these people even know, like, who actually works minimum wage jobs? It's everybody. It's literally everybody. It's not just kids learning how to work. They pull that in with people who took the wrong degree in college. They pull that in with people who are like 50 years old and can't work somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Like, you have a lot of people. We live in a minimum wage nation, mm-hmm. and you have a lot of people that are just horribly wasting their potential because of the way that the system works, and they could be doing amazing things for society, but they're just stuck at some dead-end job, and there's not much they can do about it, and they're stuck with a bunch of other people that they wouldn't fit in with, that aren't like, that don't vibe on the same wavelength, and a number of reasons. It's just a mess.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, interesting. Like, talk to your friends about this. So like, again, this hasn't gotten a whole lot of traction because I think like there are some people who think like, oh, problem solved. Like, sensitivity training is not. No, it's maybe if this guy actually came out with a public statement and like there was some kind of accountability mechanism, but nothing of that sort has happened or occurred. And again, like at the very least, like his life ain't gonna end if he loses his job.
I mean, compare that to what like Starbucks did when they caught doing racist things in Philly, when that like one of their managers got like called the cops on a black person for no reason. Like, not only did they fire the manager, this wasn't just like one person that had to do sensitivity training. They had to do it for Starbucks almost all over the country, and they shut it down for a couple of days in order to do it. You now can just sit there and hang out for free and use their bathroom for free without having to buy anything. Like, this is not even close. Like, Hopcat's just doing the whole changing the name of the crack fries thing now, perhaps to draw attention away from this and maybe some other smaller local scandals and other locations that Hopcat has that we might not even know about.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring up too, when you target somebody in isolation like that, it's less likely that they're going to realize, oh, I've been eating up a lot of bootlicking propaganda, rather than they'll just be resentful and they'll pretend that they see things a little differently, but really they're just like probably just mad at all the damn libs in Kalamazoo who got him in trouble. So yeah, you need like an across the board institutional change. Like we're talking like with Starbucks, Bucks.
Y'all.
But yeah, please, if you feel like, say something to Hopcat, give him a call. Like, again, they weren't going to do anything about this until people contacted them. So, like, yeah, call them up. Tell them how you feel about it. Really, like, bottom line, and this is kind of my point I'm going to leave off. Like, I think everybody has the capability to change. And, if I didn't think we could change any reactionary's mind, I would be a very, very sad person and probably just shuffle off. But it is not the responsibility of the people working under this guy to, help him along with that process, or be basically the guinea pigs to make sure that this racist, reactionary, anti-worker guy is no longer racist, reactionary, or anti-worker. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's all I have to say about that.
All right. So I guess with that, it's about 6:25. We can take a little bit of an early break, and then we've got a few more things we definitely want to dig into. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
This is Maria Bamford, and oh no, I screwed it up. Okay. This is Maria Bamford, and you're listening. Oh, I did it again. This is Maria Bamford, and you're listening to WIDR-FM.
Hey there, Wider listeners. Know what's even cooler than supporting Radio Evolution? Driving safe in the winter.
So listen to Zia's tips.
If you want to drive safe.
Keep a safe distance from other drivers. If you find yourself sliding out of control, turn into the skid to regain control of the vehicle. And if visibility is low, go slow. Don't be afraid to go under the speed limit if you have to. Last but not least, stay warm and keep extra blankets in your trunk or back seat in case of emergency. This has been a friendly reminder from Wider.
All right, y'all, we are back. Again, big thanks to Sid Redlin. If you missed it last week, we did a bit about copyright law is weird in America. and so is capitalism. So all of our background music from now on is going to be local stuff. So big thanks to Sid Redland. This is his track, Sunday Morning Moog, Side A, Caffeine Frop, and Bloody Mary. Okay, so we wanted to go back to the national level. Just talk to him about all the scummy stuff going on in Lansing and right here in Kalamazoo. We want to talk a little bit about, if you've been online, which you're a millennial or Gen Z listening to this probably, so the answer is most likely yes. You may have noticed that both a lot of social media sites are cracking down on what kind of content they're allowing on their platforms. This includes Tumblr, which, all those memes and jokes rolling around about like, oh, they're taking all the pornographic imagery off of Tumblr and, RIP Tumblr and all that stuff. Perhaps a little bit more pernicious is Facebook is tightening up their guidelines about the kind of speech they're going to allow on their platforms, and particularly talking about the kind of language they're going to allow on there oriented around sex. And the problem, one of the big problems is the way that the rules are written out. It's conflating sex also with gender, and if Tumblr's awful porn finding algorithms are any indication, or even Facebook's awful algorithms are any indication, this could have very bad repercussions for not only sex workers, but also the LGBTQ community.
Yes, like on Facebook, people have reported getting stuff taken down just by saying I'm gay or I'm a top. People on Tumblr are having post-top surgery photos taken down or flagged, stuff like that. Man. And now, sometimes it doesn't happen, sometimes it does, all that stuff. But, because, queerness is often seen as inherently sexual, which, by the way, is, super queerphobic, it's going to mean that a lot of, our stuff that we just would post is going to be targeted. And, I think what's bad news about what's going on with the stuff with Tumblr specifically is that it's because it's been such a big art for such a big website for independent artists and for NSFW content by individuals. It's been a really positive source for people to explore their sexuality in somewhere that's relatively safe and anonymous, and without having to fill the niche of the cookie cutter porn star. And while the whole Victoria's Secret and the responses to it have been happening with the fact that that more people's bodies should be seen as desirable, this is a huge slap in the face to that from Tumblr, and that's really not okay. And a lot of that from both Facebook, Tumblr, and even premium Snapchat girls getting reported comes from the whole Sesta Fosta thing that's passed not too long ago, targeting sex workers. And it's slowly chipping away at internet speech bit by bit, and it's affecting people not just in the US but all over the world, because most of these giant social media platforms are based in Silicon Valley, and they have to follow our federal laws. So it's really a shame what's going on, and I'm trying to figure out, if you can figure out how to back up all your stuff on Tumblr, as individual, image, video, audio, whatever files, then let me know, because I've tried Tumblr 3 and it's not working.
Yeah.
And if you send a request to the actual website, they take 2.5 weeks or whatever, and that's not soon enough to get this stuff before, the whole website gets canceled, essentially. Yeah. Which it will, because it's been, a huge outlet for the queer community in general, and it's just gonna overturn. It really is gonna overturn the whole website. And one more thing I'll add to this: these things happening also illustrates the fact that social media's platforms already know that they're monopolies, and they just don't listen to their actual user base. I think Tumblr and Facebook are, to a lesser extent, Twitter are perhaps the most egregious about this. And the question now is, where do we go from here? Well, a lot of these open source sort of platforms already exist, but people aren't really going to them. Even when people were deleting Facebook, they went to Instagram, which, by the way, is owned by Facebook. Like,
are you talking about alternatives like MeWe?
Yeah, like MeWe, like Minds, like Diaspora, like Mastodon. I've been on Diaspora for a while, and it really popped up after the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal, but it didn't really stick. And but I'm considering going to MeWe, Minds, or Mastodon. I know like one of the sub-sites of Mastodon has been like a really good outlet for sex workers. Like they called it Switter, and it's based in like a country where sex work is legal. So that's probably like if that's something that you're looking for specifically, or if you're just trying to like support girls and other people doing that kind of work, then that's probably where you'd want to go.
And I did want to mention too, because we brought up sex workers a couple times when we're talking about this, but there is a more explicit connection. Tumblr and Facebook did not just decide to become Puritans overnight for no reason. So a lot of this goes back to a subject we talked about a lot back in the spring, which is the passing of Faustin and Sesta. And not only is it making life more difficult for sex workers, but here's how it's playing out into this issue that we're seeing today. The reason Facebook and Tumblr are really tightening up right now is because there are provisions in Faustin and Sesta that basically say if you run a website, and this is why back pages and stuff shut down almost immediately, and you get caught. And it's not even necessarily that you are promoting somebody's ability to, solicit or sell sex work. It's that it happened on your platform. If it happens on your platform, the FOSTA-SESTA legislation empowers the federal government to sue you for exorbitant sums of money. Now, when you have a platform like Facebook or Tumblr, which is based on millions of users who you cannot really you can't go in and find like a sex worker ad just there. You have to overgeneralize. You have to be overly quote unquote cautious so that there isn't potential for the federal government to sue your pants off. And so that is the reason why these websites are doing this. And again, it's kind of like this unintended impact from this legislation running amok and making life difficult, not just for sex workers, but also LGBT folks, and any folks who really just want to be open and talk about sexuality on their social media platforms.
Yeah, and it's really egregious, and it's not getting better. In fact, certain individuals have been making it worse. There's this so-called movement called Thought Audit, which has been you've seen the memes of reporting premium Snapchat girls to the IRS or whatever. Well, it's actually happening. Yeah. It's horrible. And there's this article in Motherboard where somebody dug up this huge spreadsheet on 8chan with around 20,000 profiles, links to their PayPal and info about them, their screen name, their legal name, although it could very likely be not accurate. And it contained more than 160,000 entries, locations, links to wish lists, payment processors, other bios. And these are just one of the databases. I'm sure there's plenty other out there. And it's been causing these people to get harassed. It's a lot of people have gotten their source of living taken away from them, and it's really horrible. And the people behind that sort of doxing are transparent about it. They want to punish and hopefully kill sex workers, and a lot of them also are kind of extending similar tactics to the activists on the left more broadly, just to find illegal stuff that they're doing and then report it, basically mass calling the cops on people for BS.
Oh man, I wish the incels would just stay in the sewer. Oh man, oh god.
See, this we need legal sex work so that incels aren't a thing. You understand me now?
Yeah, that's no, for serious. Oh man. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't really have much more to say about this topic other than stand up for sex workers, and primarily if you really want to get to the root of this in the next legislative session, we really need to start building some social grassroots resistance and with the goal of repealing FOSTA and SESTA, because again, this is why this is happening. And again, it's not even on, let's not forget, people like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren signed off on this legislation without really understanding the impact it would have on the community. And, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because they seem like they actually care about people, unlike most people in Congress. But, none of them are going to do anything about this until there is some resistance from the bottom up. And this is an issue that I think it wouldn't be the easiest thing to rally around, but it wouldn't be the hardest thing either, because Tumblr and Facebook don't necessarily want to do this stuff. It makes it harder for them. It makes them under the scrutiny of the federal government. So there are even certain oligarchs who aren't really a big fan of this either. So again, that I think that's the big thing. To really tackle this problem at the root, we gotta repeal FOSTA SESTA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess one more thing about Facebook continuing to get worse. They have this new Facebook Watch thing, which they for some reason seem to think is a good idea, and it also think it's a good idea to plaster advertisements all over bus stations and billboards in Chicago for some reason.
Yeah.
That it's also got a contract with the likes of CNN, Fox News, ABC, MSNBC. So while Facebook has been good, at least historically, for getting news out to people that might not necessarily see it, like the sort of anti-establishment stuff, the establishment news outlets are aware of that, and they're gonna try to tighten their grip on the new town square, so to speak. So be on the watch for that. And by that I mean don't watch that and tell your friends not to watch that.
Yep.
We already have Netflix and Hulu. Why is other than this propaganda stuff, why is Facebook Watch a thing is what I'm trying to wrap my head around. But,
oh yeah, I've seen that too. Is they're trying to get into the streaming game, which just seemed really odd to me. But
yeah, well, I mean, someone brought up the point that they bought Oculus Rift a while ago, which didn't make sense to anybody for a while. But consider the fact that Facebook has a disproportionate amount of our modern human interactivity now, and they're going into virtual reality. Think of the logical conclusion of that. That's pretty terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it certainly is. I guess we were thinking maybe closing the show out a little early. Was there anything else you really wanted to dive into, Nora, while we still have the airtime?
I guess real quick, the Trump administration has recently pulled the plug on research to find new cures and treatments to HIV because it used fetal tissue. So it basically screws over sexual minorities and appeases the religious right in two ways. One way by allowing HIV to still be a problem, and another way by we can't use the fetuses on the stem cells to do this kind of research. And this sort of research is not going to be easily recovered, and it's a damn shame.
And I think that's also a potent reminder. Don't push for the impeachment of Trump until you got enough dirt on Mike Pence to take him with, because that would be a nightmare. I mean, let's be clear. That particular story or legislation or whatnot, that has Mike Pence's fingerprints all over it. Mike Pence was, when he was governor of Indiana, he was the only governor in the 21st century who actually had HIV and AIDS rates go up under his time as governor because of similar pulling out funding and research in a very similar manner.
But a recent court decision made it so that states cannot pull their Medicaid funding from Planned Parenthood. So that's a huge win. Remarkably enough, Brett Kavanaugh voted in favor of not letting states pull that kind of funding from Planned Parenthood, which I found very surprising.
Yeah.
And makes me wonder if Roe is going to be repealed after all, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, well, a lot of things can happen, and we'll see how that ends up panning out. But I think for now, we're going to go ahead and sign off.
Can I do one more quick hit?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
So if you have MDP and KCDP membership, this is with
that's right,
and local Democratic parties. There's a slate of people that are going to try to run the County Democratic Party for the year of 2019 and 2020. It'll remain the chair, Jake Andrews, but the new first and second vice chair would be Epping Garrett and Hadley Robinson. You probably remember Epping Garrett ran for Congress in the 6th Congressional District, and they really have like a really progressive platform that they're really trying to push, but you really do have to be an MDP member and a KCDP member to be able to actually vote on this. So if you have the chance, if you have some time on Saturday, and I will get this. This is at 10 a.m. in the Van Dusen Room at the Kalamazoo Public Library downtown. And they will also elect some KCDP officers. But I think if we can get the leadership of this county party to really push them in a progressive direction, we're still one of the largest populated counties in Michigan. So this could mean some good things.
Yeah, and I will say, and taking aside my kind of putting my anarcho-communist ideology on the shelf for a second to talk a little bit more about on the ground strategy and what our politics look like here. 6th district, particularly out of the Kalamazoo County Party is fairly progressive. They support, this county went heavily for Bernie. Most of the membership is very progressive. Where they do really fall short, though, is I'd say two things. They don't really challenge Democratic Party leadership.
Nope.
And again, they don't really do a lot of actual outreach to working class people. They're very
suburbanite.
Very monochromatic. But a lot of older folk. Okay, here's a good example. So I remember being at one of these meetings once. Everybody was praising Bernie Sanders, and they were brainstorming who should we invite to our yearly fundraiser? And then somebody, one of the same guys who praised Bernie Sanders, said, we should invite I'm having a brain fart, Nora. Who's the chair of the Democratic Party?
Tom Perez.
Tom Perez, yeah. And I was like, are you being sarcastic? It's oh no, you actually want to invite Tom Perez. Okay.
I would invite Tom Perez to mow my lawn.
No. Well, you got to put hope on the ballot and hope on your lawn. So,
we lead with a lawnmowers. We get everyone a fair shot.
All right. But
that's enough for me.
That is important. Storm the barricades, metaphorically speaking, and especially get Epping elected. She's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and if you want the institutional politics here in the Kalamazoo area to take a little bit more action and lean further to the left, there's when you could do it. All right. Okay. Anything else, Nora?
That's all I can think of.
Okay, well, again, I want to thank y'all for tuning in to the show today. Again, big thanks to Sid Redland for giving permission to use some of his music during the program. We upload our episodes to YouTube, and you can catch those, or you can also follow us on our Facebook page, Hoodrat Strategist Radio Program. I want to thank y'all for tuning in, and keep on fighting for that revolution solution.